Hello everybody, it's Kaitlin here. Welcome back and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening wherever you are. Today we're just going to be doing a super relaxing journal with me session where I set up a reoccurring task list or routines list, but it's going to be a little different than my usual spreads. I've decided to try putting aside the more minimal, simple spreads and trying my hand at a bit of collaging and actually using color in my journal. I don't know if it's just the current world state or the traveler's notebook sparking tons of inspiration, but for a while now I've really wanted to get more creative in my journal, and that is what we're doing today. While I set up this spread, I thought I'd talk about my process of what I've found really useful when setting up a spread that I want to be both creative as well as productive in my journal, and how I kind of go about that and not kind of leave one of those two things by the wayside. So one thing that I like to start with, which you can see me doing right here, is whenever I make a spread, I find one thing that really helps me keep it productive or functional is by adding the information first. This I like to do for a couple reasons. The first reason is that I tend to be a bit overwhelmed by literally everything. So something like this, writing down the information, is a very tangible first step that makes it a lot easier for me to kind of start the spread and jump into the entire process. But besides kind of being able to ease myself into the spread itself, I find by writing down the information first, it alleviates and prevents the potential issue of running out of room on the spread, which I find can happen for me if I decorate first. I don't know, something about just writing down all the information from the forefront just gives me a lot of comfort in knowing that all the information is going to be on the spread, and I'm not going to be losing out on any details because I've run out of room because I added this really giant sticker. Another kind of added bonus to including the information first is I find that it kind of guides me towards where I want to end up collaging on the spread. And what I mean by this is, as I add information to this spread, as you can see, it's filling up space. And as it fills up this space, it leaves other spaces that are blank. Pretty much what I mean is, once I write down all my information, it's really easy for me to see what white space there is left on the spread, and where there are really big blank spaces create excellent opportunities for collaging. Of course, I do want to mention briefly that I did start my kind of text or my list a little further down on the left-hand page, and that is purely because I knew that I wanted to include a title at the top, so I kind of planned for that in advance. But I didn't plan for the right-hand side to be so blank, which is awesome because now I can fill in that space with a fun collage, and it's not just this giant piece of white paper staring at me. Alright, so now we are jumping into the fun part, which is the collaging. Before starting this collage, I did a couple things to set myself up for success and prevent overwhelm and giving up, and these things were picking a color palette and also picking a couple elements that inspired me that I knew I wanted to include in the spread. In this case, I was really inspired by this gel pen that I had. The pen itself is actually the headers in the spread, and it's the Casis yellow pen from the Sarasa vintage set. So I knew I wanted to include that, and I also knew I wanted to include some floral stamps. So I kind of started there, and based on the yellow color, I built a very neutral color palette consisting of that mustard yellow, the craft paper brown, and also just a kind of off-white color. Although I kind of go in later and switch up the color palette a little bit, I find by picking a few kind of elements as well as colors that I know I want to include in the spread really helps give the spread a bit of a direction and just something I can kind of start off with. I think this just kind of makes the spread awesome in the end as well, because you're kind of starting off by picking stuff that you really like and building the spread around that, which I just think is a good way to go about things. Start with the things you love, right? Although I like to kind of keep my collaging process pretty chill and open-ended, I do like to try to take a bit of a less is more approach with it as well. This is just because I like to keep my spreads really clean and simple, but also because while I really do want to include collaging, I want to make sure that at the end of adding all the decoration, the information is not kind of detracted by all of the other details. So in order to do that, I find personally making my collages a bit more simple, not doing too much layering, and kind of limiting it to 3 or 4 elements really helps. In this case, with the collage I did on the right hand side, I used 3 kind of elements. The big piece of white paper, these 2 kind of pencil lines that I drew with a ruler, and then the floral stamp. Last minute, I decided to add the stamp with this kind of dark green ink because I thought it kind of contrasted well with the yellow pen, and I really love how that turned out. And as I'm gluing down this last element here, this is kind of the final spread in its full form, if you will. I think this spread will be so helpful for me to refer back to when I'm not sure what I want to kind of get done at the beginning of the month. I can kind of flip back to this, use it as a jumping off point for what should I be doing and kind of identifying those things instead of trying to come up with them all in my head. So that is kind of my attempt at keeping a creative but productive journal spread all in one. Let me know if you kind of have any tips for keeping your journal productive but creative and how you kind of bridge that gap. And besides that, I am going to get going. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye, everyone.